McDonald versus the City of Chicago was a case in which on June 28, 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, in a ruling of 5-4, that the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms, applies to state and local governments, as well as to the federal government. The case arose in 2008 when Otis McDonald, a retired African-American custodian, and others filed suit in U.S. District Court to challenge provisions of a 1982 Chicago law that, among other things, generally banned the new registration of handguns and made registration a prerequisite of possession of a firearm. The District Court dismissed the suits. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit consolidated the cases and affirmed the lower court's decision, noting that it was compelled to adhere to precedents in which the Supreme Court rebuffed requests to apply the Second Amendment to the states. The Supreme Court granted certiorari to the plaintiffs and McDonald on September 30, 2009, and oral arguments were heard on March 2, 2010. Let it be noted that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment played a huge role in this case. The 14th Amendment reads, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws."
Your Honor, today I am here to challenge 4 broad aspects of Chicago's gun registration laws for my clients. 1. Prohibit the registration of handguns, thus affecting the broad handgun ban. 2. Require that handguns be registered prior to their acquisition by Chicago residents. 3. Mandate that guns be re-registered annually with another payment of the fee. 4. Render any gun permanently non-registerable if its registration lapses. Here are the reasons why. First, the Second Amendment, in addition to applying to federal jurisdictions, should also be applied against state and local governments, using a judicial process called selective incorporation. Selective incorporation involves convincing the court that a right is fundamental by being implicit in the concept of ordered liberty or deeply rooted in our nation's history and traditions through the 14th Amendment. Second, the Due Process Clause undoubtedly applies in the situation regarding my client. The clause deals with the administration of justice, and thus the Due Process Clause acts as a safeguard from arbitrary denial of life, liberty, or property by the government outside the sanction of law. McDonald is being denied these rights. All he wants to do is protect him and his family, and the Chicago police cannot take that right away from him. Thank you, Your Honor.
First, I'd like to thank you for calling on me, Your Honor. Incorporating the Second Amendment against the states would disrupt the balance between state and federal power. The United States Conference of Mayors emphasizes greater need for strict gun regulation in large urban areas with crime problems as opposed to rural areas, and the successes show in strict gun regulations and reducing crime in large cities such as New York. Chicago also worries that if the Second Amendment is incorporated, gun control over gun policy will move from local governments who have an intimate understanding of local problems to the federal courts, which are more detached from local conditions, and will have to proceed with little to no case law on the subject.
The court has reached a decision. By a 5-4 margin, we have held that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess firearms for lawful use, such as self-defense in the home. Accordingly, this strikes down as unconstitutional provisions of a Washington, D.C. law that effectively banned possession of handguns by non-law enforcement officials and required lawfully owned firearms to be kept unloaded, disassembled, or locked when not located at a business place or being used for lawful recreational activities. In regard to District of Columbia v. Heller, the court did not cite a specific standard in making its determination, and it rejected the interest balancing standard. proposed by Justice Breyer, and a rationale basis standard, the Second Amendment right to keep and bear firearms is not absolute, and a wide range of gun control laws remain presumptively lawful, according to the court.
Alright, so my opinion for this court case. Thanks, Bart.
I'm kidding. sorry. Keep going.
My opinion for this court case is I definitely think they ruled it the right way. Just because, especially with the due process clause in the 14th Amendment, Chicago didn't really have the right constitutionally to prevent McDonald from owning a handgun. And I think he just had good motives for it, especially just trying to protect his family, especially after the incident in his house.
I agree with Mason because banning handguns in Chicago goes against the Second Amendment, which is in the Constitution, which makes that law unconstitutional. And like Mason said, I think that McDonald had good reasons for owning a handgun, considering that his house was broken into multiple times, and he just wanted the safety. He just wanted a gun to have safety for his family. I think the court ruled correctly on this case, and I think Nick has opinions about it too.
I do have opinions about it. I definitely
You're
agree
welcome.
I definitely agree with both what Mason and Bargoff said, and he
Great
definitely
minds think alike.
he definitely has the right to own a handgun, considering what happened at his own home. And it's ridiculous that this case even made it to the Supreme Court. It should be implied that the Second Amendment not only applies to the federal government, but state and local governments as well, which is the 14th Amendment due process.
Yep. So we all agree.
Yeah, do we want to read Simon's opinion?
Yeah, let's read opinion.
Simon. Okay. Quote, "The rights to the Second and 14th Amendment belong to all citizens. McDonald is no exception just because he lives in rural areas. Crime happens in rural areas as well. It just doesn't get as much publicity as urban areas. McDonald's claim that he needed a handgun as he felt since his home was broken into, and he felt a presence and realistic risk of him and his family's lives. In addition, McDonald wasn't even asking for much firepower, he was just asking for a handgun." End quote.
So yeah, basically, according to Simon, McDonald lived in the rural part of Chicago, which doesn't exist.
Maybe
I
Thank you for the extension on this project, Ms. Winter.
We love you.
Shout out to Miss Winter. Shout out to Mr.
Mom.
Hubbard.
Thanks, Mom. Love you.
Bye.
From Gob Gob.